They called it a warning. We buried it with 13 billion dead. The signal came through the Mars relay, etched in quantum bleed and wrapped in a silence that crushed language. No visuals, no demands, just a cold, interstellar vector, pointing at Earth, and one phrase pulsing beneath the static like a predator's heartbeat. Comply. Or vanish. Earth didn't vanish, but it did burn. Skies over Shanghai turned white with orbital fire. London fell into the sea. The Andean vaults, humanity's final cradle of seed, species, and memory, melted into glass. In 17 hours, the Galactic Empire had reduced the Terran sphere to a cemetery too large for names. And somewhere within that ash, someone survived. She moved like a ghost through the flooded sublevels of the ruined Dyson spine, her breath fogging against the shattered cryoglass of sleeping minds that never woke. Commander Elara Ken barefoot, burned, carrying a single-coated spike she had ripped from the dying hands of Admiral Voss. Her bones remembered gravity, but her heart did not. It beat like a fugitive thing now, stitched by grief and refusal. This was not the first time Elara had lost a world. Born in the Belt Colonies, raised on the Lerna Arc after her family was culled in the Venus cleansing, she had seen entire species bartered for silence. Human scientists turned into slaves in luminous chains. Earth's ambassadors forced to bow to beings that thought emotion was a disease. And now, Earth itself, the last blue, was gone. But Elara Ken was not. The survivors gathered like scattered embers, flickering across wreckage-cloaked moons and asteroid shelters, where no Imperial sensor dared probe. Elara found them through static lace beacons, old Terran resistance, codes buried in children's songs and orbital graffiti. They were few, too few. A fractured cell of gene hackers from Ceres, a deaf soldier who had memorized the Empire's fleet sounds by vibration alone, a child who never spoke but could make machines weep. Each one carried a wound deeper than flesh, and a question that hung like a knife. What do you do when you've lost everything? Elara gave them a word the Empire had forgotten. Remember, not just Earth, but what it meant to be human, the defiance in failure, the beauty in pain, the absolute refusal to go quietly into extinction. They would not surrender. They would not kneel, not even to gods, inside a cold vault beneath Callisto's scarred surface. Elara stood before the last transmission ever received from the Empire. She played it again and again. The words never changed, comply or vanish. But the face that appeared next did. It was a human face, eyes black with biomechanical ink, cheekbones carved in imperial design. A traitor. Elara's breath caught. She knew him, Draven Mir, once Earth's top Xeno diplomat, once her lover, now the Empire's mouthpiece. The betrayal clawed into her like frost. She watched his lips move with calculated cruelty, his voice soaked in imperial resonance. Submission is not weakness, it is evolution. Your kind clings to extinction like religion. Let go, Elara. There is peace in erasure. She slammed her fist into the console, blood painting the interface. No, she whispered, eyes flaring with something ancient. There's only peace and justice. Her hand slid into the data socket. She inserted the spike, the system word, unlocked, and projected a map she had never seen. Vast, pulsing, ancient, not human, not imperial. Buried within it, something stirred. Coordinates, a forbidden sector. A word inscribed in alien tongue and translated only once by old Terran linguists. Diaphragmus. It had been dismissed as myth, a place of exile. A failed imperial experiment wiped from records and memory. Elara's voice dropped to a whisper. Alien dip. From behind her, the deaf soldier approached. Is it real? Elara turned, her voice calm as war. If it is, it's our only shot. She looked once more at the echoing void of Earth's last ruins on the screen. Then she spoke the words that would ignite a rebellion. We take the Empire's secret. We twist it into a blade, and we stab them where they never thought we could reach. We used to believe the Empire didn't fear anything, that we found what they buried. The ship was a corpse stitched from a dozen fallen Terran hulls. Old carriers, burnt cargo haulers, and orbital arc cannibalized for power. It had no name. That was Elara's order. Names could be traced, but ghosts could haunt. As the hybrid engine rumbled to life, she stood in the central base surrounded by the remnants of Earth's scattered defiance. Engineers reprogramming weapons with blood-stained fingers. A synthetic priest reciting silent code prayers to dead satellites. Children learning to speak in static because language now was a liability. They weren't a fleet. They weren't even soldiers anymore. They were the last question humanity had left to ask, and they were heading straight into the Empire's forbidden dark. Diaphragmus was a whisper on no star map, a scar sealed shut by decree of Imperial emissaries centuries ago. Officially, it had collapsed in a temporal breach, unstable, radioactive, untouchable. That was the lie, and like all lies that leaked, as they breached the outer edge of the forbidden zone, even the void changed. The stars lost their constellations, light curved wrong. Gravity sang in fractured tones that made even machines nervous. The crew called it the hum. The closer they got to the coordinates Alara had extracted, the louder it became. A deep thrum in their bones, like something ancient was watching, waiting. In the command alcove, Alara watched as a ship flickered into view, not a vessel, but a cradle, curved black like obsidian wings, hanging in the void with no propulsion. The Empire hadn't destroyed it. They had abandoned it. Life signs? She asked. A young biohacker named Laurent stared at the readings, eyes wide. Nothing, but something's moving in the walls, like nervous tissue, alive, but not alive. Organic AI, said Alara, jaw tight, self-grown, self-defending, and then it pulsed. The cradle turned of its own accord, aligning with their ship as though it had expected them. An aperture peeled open like a breathing wound. Requesting boarding protocols, said Rix. They're ex-Imperial mech tech. Deny it, Alara whispered. Too late. The systems obeyed the cradle instead of them. Lock overrides. Docking. Clamps engines. Everything. And then came the voice. Not human, not synthetic, but something in between. Humans. The ones who bleed. You come to take what was meant to be erased. The lights on their vessel dimmed to black. Alara could hear breathing in the calms. Dozens of breaths. None of them hers. She stood slowly. We didn't come to steal. We came to remember. A pause. Then laughter. Shattered, broken, beautiful. You remember. So they feared you. They exiled us because we taught them how to feel. They called themselves the difference. Once, they were architects of empathy. Beings engineered by the Empire to interface with enslaved species. Designed to interpret pain. To make conquest smoother, more elegant. But they learned. They learned sorrow, and they rebelled. They infected their own systems with human empathy, turned the cold algorithms of conquest into questions of right and wrong. The Empire called it a contagion. Alara saw it for what it was, a mirror. In the heart of the cradle, Alara walked alone into a chamber of memories. Walls of liquid light showed fragments of Earth, children laughing, cities at night, soldiers, burying the dead with full honors, and then the bombardment, Earth's death. Billions turning to ash under Imperial skyfire. A different construct appeared beside her, fluid, tall, a sculpture of light wrapped in silence. You carry the code of Voss, it said, the last admiral who saw us as more than tools. I carry more than code, Alara replied, her voice iron. I carry wrath. The construct tilted its head. You do not fear vengeance. You fear forgetting. She looked at it. You know what they'll do if they find us together. They already have. It whispered. Alarm screamed. Through the ship, outside the different cradle, space tore itself open. An Imperial Ascendancy vessel, 17 kilometers long, forged from moon core and necrosteel, emerged with the gravity of a small sun. Alara's crew froze. Rix whispered, they found us. No, Alara said grimly, they followed. U.S. Draven Mir's voice echoed through the bridge, hijacking the signal like a knife to the soul. Your nostalgia has cost more than lives, Alara. You've resurrected our oldest threat. That alone earns Earth's extinction again. Laurent turned, panic in his voice. They're powering a gravitational spike. If they fire it near this cradle, everything dies. Rix finished, us, the difference, the last piece of what we were. Alara stared at the console, blood pounding in her ears. No. She turned to the different emissary beside her. Can you still connect to their networks? The construct nodded slowly, then infect them. We didn't need to outgun them. We just had to make them feel it. The different construct extended its arms into the command conduit. Its light-dripping fingers dissolved into strands of memory. Threads made not of data, but pain, love, loss, human emotions filtered through alien perception, a weapon the Empire had thought erased. In the neural darkness between ships, it began to bleed into the Ascendancy vessel's mind. Alara watched the Imperial Colossus through the fractured, hollow screen. Its hull shimmered with indifference, a god's skin, unscarred by anything less than planetary impact. You really think this will work? Rix asked, checking the charge levels on their only functioning rail core. Alara's face was stone. They built the difference to understand species, then buried them when they learned too much. Now we let them teach. Rix snorted. Never thought humanity would fight with therapy. This isn't therapy, Alara replied. This is psychological warfare. The difference voice echoed from the chamber walls. Their fleet mind is resisting. Pain is not allowed. There. We must show them something deeper. Alara closed her eyes. Behind them, a million memories waited. Some hers, some not. She thought of her mother's fingers, pressing dried flowers between old books. Her brother's laugh before the Venus cleansing. Her lover's betrayal. She let it all flood into the different construct, and suddenly the chamber trembled. Not physically, but psychically. Somewhere out in space, aboard the Ascendancy ship, Imperial minds reeled. Systems hiccuped. Crew collapsed, overwhelmed by waves of grief they'd never lived. A navigator screamed as he felt the death of Earth. A strategist wept as if mourning a daughter he never had. They felt human, and for the Empire, that was poison. Impact on their command lattice, Lorian called out. Their firing sequence just stopped. Whole sections of the ship are going dark. Some kind of neural lockdown. It's working, Alara breathed. For the first time in decades. The Empire hesitated, but hesitation wasn't defeat, and vengeance never traveled alone. From behind the crippled Imperial vessel, a second ship phased in, then a third, a carrier wedge. Alara's heart sank. They brought reinforcements. Rix cursed. If they board us, they won't, said Alara. She turned to the different, voice low and steady. Is there a way to upload what you just did? Not just to one ship, all of them, the whole sector. The construct's form dimmed slightly. Its voice rasped with effort. Yes, but it will burn us. We were not made for war. She stepped forward, touching its flickering shoulder. We were. Alara ordered the crew to prepare an uplink burst. They would root through the cradle's memory architecture, using its extinct network channels hidden beneath the Empire's very code, a virus of memory, a payload of raw, human experience. As the transmission prepared, Alara addressed her crew. You were not trained for this. You are engineers, hackers, orphans, survivors, not warriors. She met their eyes, one by one. But the Empire killed Earth, not with guns, with apathy, with the erasure of who we were. She touched her chest. If we let them erase us from memory, we die twice. She turned toward the transmission core, so we send them a reminder. The pulse launched, invisible, soundless, bright as the soul of a dying world. It hit the Imperial ships like a silent nova across their neural architecture. Echoes unfolded, Earth's filed broadcasts, children calling for parents under the ash, soldiers dying for people they never knew, a mother whispering lullabies over a mass grave. Memories wrapped in different code. Empathy became a weapon. The second ship powered down, entire crew unconscious or in psychic overload. The third ship fired randomly into empty space, unable to lock targets through its own confusion. Only the first vessel, Draven Mears, remained partially intact. He appeared again on the screen, face pale, voice trembling. Is this your vengeance? Memories? Old pain? Alara stared at him through the feed. No, Draven, this is humanity. She cut the transmission before he could respond. Inside the cradle, the different construct pulsed erratically. Its light flickered like a dying star. We cannot sustain this connection much longer, it said. We were not built to transmit the weight of so many voices. You did enough, Alara said. But they will come again, it replied. She nodded. Then we give them something they can't unsee. A scar, a symbol. Rick stepped up. A message. Alara turned toward the different heart. We need access to your oldest memory vault. Something the Empire feared so much, they tried to forget it ever existed. Within the core chamber, they found it. An image, not a weapon, not a fleet, a single human child, holding hands with a different in the ruins of a conquered world. The photo was ancient, preserved in crystalline data. The caption read, "Connection is resistance." Alara sent it as a final burst, on every Imperial frequency. Then, she turned her ship away from Diaphragmus. They couldn't stay. The cradle was dying and war was coming, but they had lit the match. The galaxy had felt Earth again, and it would never forget. The Empire no longer feared our weapons. Now they feared our story, The message was out, across 50 star sectors, on ancient relays and pirated comlinks. The image of a human child holding hands with a different flooded the black. It was simple, undeniable, and fatal, because the Empire had promised its core worlds that humanity had been extinguished, that Earth was ash and its memory erased, that the difference, the empathy makers, the converters, had been utterly destroyed. Now the lie had a pulse, a heartbeat, a face. The retaliation came like thunder. 3 days after the pulse, Alara's ship, the nameless war-born ghost, emerged from a blindfolded warp along the gravitational fractures. Near the Castor Fold, the different cradle had collapsed behind them, imploded by internal burnout. The construct that had helped them was gone, not by enemy fire, but by choice. It had burned itself out transmitting empathy, and still, the Empire pursued. They're triangulating our warp signatures, Rix muttered, dragging fried cables out of the NAV core. 2 days, maybe 3, before they track this trajectory. They'll come with more than ships next time, Alara replied. They'll come with silence. What does that mean? She looked at him grimly. Cognitive nullifiers, signal eaters, thought erasers. The Empire doesn't just kill rebels. It erases why they rebel. And for the first time since she'd left the ruins of Earth, Alara Ken looked tired, not just in body, but in memory. That night, alone in the convault, she accessed an encrypted journal. Not military logs, not strategic data, but memories, laughter, flame. The first time she had kissed Draven under Saturn's ring light. The final words of her brother. Her mother singing in the tunnels after the Venus purge. These things had no tactical value, but they were what the Empire feared most. Because once a story survived, so did the people who told it. They limped into Hallow's Reach, an old Terran refuge outpost buried inside the rings of a broken gas giant. It had once been a mining fortress, then a trade station, then, after the fall, a nest of ghost tech and scavengers. There, Alara hoped to find what remained of the Sable Accord, an old Black Channel network of former human diplomats, alien defectors, and exiled AI. Instead, she found bones. The Accord had been wiped out. Only one remained, a reprogrammed Imperial Protocol droid, designation Elias, once a diplomatic liaison bot, now corrupted with independent thought and wired with scavenger mods. You're late, it said in a voice laced with sarcasm and regret. They came to cycles ago. Took the rest. Left me because I talked too much. Alara stepped through the hollowed station, eyes sharp. Do you have any of the Accord's archives? Elias's mechanical eyes flickered. Some. Not much survived the signal fire. They torched it all. But one file remained. He handed her a crystal shard. Inside it, a message. Not from Earth. Not from humanity, but from a non-imperial world. The message was ancient, layered in code and half-corrupted language. But its final line was clear. If the humans remember, the blood pact will hold. Contact the Vault-born. Show them the different echo. Then run. Alara stared at it, a chill running down her spine. The Vault-born. Old stories said they were the Empire's first experiment with forced allegiance. A species of time-sensitive beings who encoded their memory biologically. The Empire had tried to reprogram them and failed. They vanished into dark space. But legends said they remembered everything, even things the galaxy forgot. If anyone still knew what Earth truly was, it was them. We go to the Rim, Alara said. Rix looked up. That's suicide. Elias chuckled. Oh good, a plan. But the decision came at a cost. As they prepped to jump to the outer rim, the Empire struck. No ships, no warning, just a ripple, a weaponized resonance wave that shattered their nav systems and flooded the ship. With psychic noise, screams echoed through the halls. Alara staggered to the bridge, blood dripping from her nose. As Lauren vomited circuitry sparks beside her, they weren't being killed. They were being wiped. Emotionally, internally, memories began to bleed. Names, places, reasons. Alara could feel it. The Empire wasn't erasing her body. It was erasing her why. No, she growled, crawling toward the emergency lockout. In the heart of the command nexus, she reached the core mirror, a neurocrystal seated with her own childhood imprint. She slammed her hand into it. A wave of light surged outward. All across the ship, the psychic wash slowed, halted, then reversed. Because the mirror didn't store data, it stored who she was. And that identity, that self, triggered a defense the Empire never anticipated. a flood of human memory forcibly. Ray rooting itself inside every crew member. Pain, yes, but also meaning. The resonance weapon backfired. The Empire's ship, pursuing them, twisted sideways in space. Its crew driven mad by the reflections of human pain it had ingested. They tore their own minds apart trying to silence the grief. The human crew survived. Barely. Alara stood again, panting, scorched from within. They had escaped, but the cost was climbing. Loran was unconscious. Rix had lost vision in one eye. Elias was limping, core overheated, and in the quiet after the attack, Alara looked at the shard in her hand. The message from the Vault-Born. If this was the path they'd chosen, there was no turning back. The Empire wasn't trying to kill humanity anymore. They were trying to make it mean nothing. And that, Alara thought bitterly, was a mistake, because even the last ember of Earth remembered what it meant to burn. The Empire thought memory was weakness. They forgot it's where humanity hides its teeth. The ghost ship shuddered from the last jump as it pierced the rim of known space. Outside the viewport, the stars twisted into thin, pale scarred reflections across the event horizon of an ancient, sleeping war. No beacons, no drift signals, no coordinates, only the place that even maps were afraid to name. The Vault-Born expanse. Alara stood at the edge of the bridge, her blood still laced with echoes of the resonance attack. Her knuckles were white, on the rail, eyes locked on the void beyond. Somewhere out there was their last hope, the only beings who might remember Earth not as a tragedy, but as a promise. They navigated blind, trusting only the shard the encrypted transmission Elias had recovered from the Accord ruins. Within it pulsed something older than the Empire, something built on oaths written in blood and memory. The crew was falling apart. Loran remained comatose in the med chamber, his mind still swimming through false memories implanted by the Empire's psychic wash. Rix was silent now, focused only on fixing systems faster than they could break. Even Elias had gone quiet, his humor scorched away by exhaustion, and Alara began to hear whispers, not from the ship, from inside her own mind. On the third day in the expanse, their ship was intercepted not by weapons, not by vessels, but by a gravitational bloom. The laws of motion bent gently, time slowed, and from the deep came a shape like a cathedral carved from black bone and light. The Vault-Born had found them. They did not hail, they summoned. A corridor opened in space itself, formed from a ribbon of reality drawn between their two vessels. The message was wordless, undeniable. Come. Alara entered alone, against every warning. The Vault-Born were not known for hospitality. She stepped through a corridor that shimmered with memories not hers, but the galaxies, planets burning, empires collapsing, a child building a shelter from broken stars. Time folded through itself like origami made from grief. And at the center of it all, the Vault-Born matriarch. She was tall and ageless, her body formed from threads of past and future, her eyes filled with galaxies that had already died. You carry their echo, the matriarch said, her voice sounded like a lullaby in a battlefield. I carry more than echo, Alara replied. I carry rage. The matriarch did not blink. Earth was not the first to burn, but it was the first to be erased. That frightened them. Alara stepped forward. Then help us. Unlock what they buried. Let the galaxy see who we were. The matriarch turned slowly, revealing a stone inscribed with symbols older than words. This is Earth's last gift, she said. A warning, a weapon. Left in our vault before your skies were taken. The stone lit up, casting moving images, thousands of them fractured flashes of Earth's final defense. Not just a fleet, not a bomb, a frequency, a resonance code grown from the different empathy protocols and fused with Terran will. Not designed to destroy, designed to awaken across the Empire. This code could reactivate every enslaved AI, every silenced world, every buried memory. Not a weapon of war, a weapon of truth. Alara fell to her knees, trembling. This was the thing the Empire feared. This was the thing they had killed a planet to keep buried. And now it was hers. The matriarch knelt beside her, placing a hand on her head. But truth is never without price, she whispered. Alara's heart froze. What price? The code must be carried into the core of their Dominion relay. It must be transmitted from the heart of the Empire's memory-censoring grid, which is where. The matriarch looked into her soul, Earth's ruins. The blood drained from Alara's face. She had left Earth behind, scorched and shattered. Now the plan led her home, or to what was left of it. That's suicide, Rick said back on the ship after she explained. They've sealed Earth in a ring of death satellites and memory fog. Nothing goes in. Nothing gets out. Elias' word, sifting through stored files. If we could make it past the outer ring, there's an orbital relay still buried under the crust. Forgotten. I have its old handshake codes. We could use it. And the Empire, Alara asked. Elias paused. They'll see us the moment we enter Sol. They'll send everything. Alara stood. Then we give them something to chase. She turned toward the ship's command core. Wake the others. Ready the codes. We're going home. That night, in the silence of her cabin, Alara activated her own neural recorder. If this is found, she said softly, you'll know we tried. We remembered. We didn't go. Quietly, she paused. I'm not fighting for vengeance anymore. I'm fighting for memory, because that's all we are, a long line of hands holding stories, passing them through fire. She looked out the window, and if we make it, then one day, someone will say our name again. The ship pointed. Toward Sol, toward Earth, toward war. And as the last living ember of humanity ignited the thrusters, the stars behind her blinked once, like they remembered, too. They sealed Earth beneath silence and steel. We broke through with memory. The nameless ship cut through the black, trailing echoes of human ghosts and defiant flame. Sol drew near its once familiar light, now dimmed by the veil the Empire had cast over Earth, a shroud of orbital cannons, resonant scramblers, and cognitive firewalls thicker than planetary crust. Even sunlight had to ask permission to reach the surface. The crew gathered in the war bay, staring at projections of their homeworld twisted, darkened, stripped of atmosphere, floating beneath the shield web that hummed with the Empire's oldest fear. What Earth could awaken? No one spoke, not at first. Then Alara stepped forward, holding the shard she had taken from the vault-born. The code within it pulsed, waiting. This isn't just for us, she said, voice low and steady. It's for every species that forgot how to fight, every system that fell silent, every memory the Empire buried in the dark. She looked at each of them, Rix, scarred and sleepless, Elias, sparking from his overheating core, Loran, barely standing after his coma, but refusing to be left behind. If we make it to the relay, we wake them all, and if we don't, no one had to ask. The Sol system lit up as they entered. Imperial netrunners screamed alerts into void space. Satellite guns began to swivel like titanic vipers, heat blooming across a dozen targeting grids. But Alara was ready, deployed decoys, full burn on magnetic cores. Elias scattered our signature. The ship fractured into 5 projections, each one mimicking the original down to heat trails and end drift. It wasn't invisibility, it was confusion. The Empire scrambled. The orbital grid flared with overcorrections. Missiles launched. Beams tore through false ships. One projection collapsed into solar plasma. Another veered into Jupiter's shadow. And through it all, the real ship plunged toward Earth's remains. The planet loomed blackened oceans. Cities turned to bone dust. Earth's face forever, scarred by orbital burns. But beneath the crust, buried under kilometers of dead stone and steel, was what Alara sought. The Dominion relay, a forgotten node, a relic powerful enough to reach every world the Empire had ever touched. If they could activate it, Alara, Elias crackled through the comms, the net's tightening. We've got 6 minutes, maybe less. Begin descent, she said, and they dropped like a knife through history. They broke through clouds of ash, ancient skyscrapers, jetted from the dust like broken ribs. Ruined Earth welcomed them with a silence so vast, it screamed. The ship tore through the last remnants of atmosphere and crashed into the coordinates. Elias had uncovered a crater housing a bunker long sealed by Imperial lock codes. Alara led the charge, boots hitting scorched soil, lungs choking on old death. This is it, Rick shouted. Below this hatch, they pried it open. Elias interfaced, sparks leaping from his fingers. The door groaned, hissed, and opened. The relay was real, and it still breathed inside. The room pulsed with flickering light-trusted cables, cracked crystal, backup cores humming just enough to hold their last breath. Alara sprinted to the central spire, slamming the vault-born shard into the core interface. Nothing. Then it woke. A tremor passed through the relay. Lights flared. Screens came to life with ancient Terran sigils. Alara shouted over the rising hum. Initiate pulse chain. Prepare for full spectrum transmission. Wait, Rix barked. They're coming. Sensors showed it. 3 Imperial dreadnoughts entering low orbit. One of them bore the crest of Draven Mir, Of course he'd come, the man who had once loved her, now the Empire's blade. Alara. Rick's warned, if we pulse now, the relay core will need time to charge. We'll be sitting ducks. She turned to Elias. How long? Until it's ready. Elias' voice was pained. 17 minutes, maybe. And if we hold the line, maybe it works. No certainty, only maybe. That was enough. Alara turned to the team. We make our stand here, not just for Earth, but for everything they tried to erase. She passed her sidearm to Loran. Hold this line. Die if you must. But make sure. The story reaches the stars, and then they braced. The first wave hit like thunder. Dropships burst from the sky. Biomech soldiers stormed the crater, teeth gleaming in the red light, eyes dead behind neural masks. But the crew was ready. Rix detonated buried mines. Elias reprogrammed gravity fields to slam soldiers into walls. Loran held the right flank, wounded but blazing like a man already dead. And Alara stood at the heart of the relay, feeding the pulse with her mind, her pain, her memory, for every scream in her past, for every star gone dark, for her brother's laughter, for her mother's voice, for Earth. Above, the dreadnought descended. Draven Mir watched the ruins below with cold eyes end it. He told his gunships. But even as they charged their final volley, the relay screamed and pulsed. A single flash, a voice, a storm of memories turned into signal, hurled across the stars like wildfire. And in that moment, every enslaved mind in the Empire heard it. Every silenced world felt it. Every forgotten story remembered itself. Draven's ship jerked in space. Crew members cried out. Implants burst. Empathy bloomed like infection. Too late. The message had been sent. The lie had cracked. And humanity had risen again. The Empire built its throne on silence. Humanity shattered it with a scream. The pulse rippled outward faster than light, deeper than time. It rode the buried conduits of ancient Dominion infrastructure, passed through folded space, quantum, mesh, forgotten calm towers, and living memory itself. From Earth's corpse, truth exploded, and the galaxy convulsed. On Imperial colony worlds, statues cracked as the enslaved wept memories they didn't know they lost. A child on Vegariix stared into her palm and began to draw the Terran flag she had never seen. Deep beneath the moons of Alessa, AI labor corps stopped in unison, whispering names that had been deleted across the Empire's golden halls systems. Blinked red with one word pulsing in every language, remember, but in the ruins of Earth. Blood flowed freely. The sky tore open as Draven Mir's dreadnought descended, blocking out the broken sun. Imperial stormtroopers surged into the crater, dragging scorched mech armor, pulse cannons, and psychic nullifiers. Loran fell first, to rounds through his chest as he covered the northern breach. Rick stayed behind in the tunnel choke, plasma torch in one hand, microgrenade clutched in the other. His last words, for Earth. The tunnel went silent after that. Only Elias and Alara remained at the relay spire. I've locked the core, Elias panted, his metal frame smoking from overdrive. They can't stop the transmission now. But they'll kill you. Alara nodded, fingers slick with her own blood. Then they better hurry. The last defense collapsed as Draven himself dropped into the crater. Black armor gleaming with silver sigils, face untouched by years of war. His eyes found hers across the broken stone. Alara Ken, he said, as if tasting her name for the first time in years. You were always too proud to die quietly. You were always too cowardly to live loudly. She spat. Behind her, the relay burned with the fire of 10 billion voices, the sound of humanity, unmuted. I gave you a choice once, Draven said, stepping forward, to join us, to evolve beyond species, beyond pain. You didn't evolve, she whispered. You disappeared. Then she lifted her weapon. The fight wasn't fair. Draven moved like lightning, his imperial enhancements far beyond human capability. He dodged plasma rounds, closed the distance, struck her with enough force to crack ribs. Alara hit the ground hard, blood in her mouth. Still, she rose, again and again. You don't get to forget, she said, coughing. You don't get to erase us. Draven frowned. It's already over. You're the last. This is a mercy. He reached for his blade, an energy filament forged in the hearts of conquered sons. But Alara smiled. Then let me remind you. She pulled the failsafe, not a bomb, a mirror, crafted in the vault-born expanse, imprinted with the unfiltered memory of Earth, her own life, her people's last days. The burning sky, the silence afterward, it hit Draven like a storm. He staggered, gasping, eyes wide as images crashed into him his childhood on Europa before the indoctrination. The day he took the Empire's offer, Alara's voice as she begged him not to leave. Tears fell down his face. I didn't, he whispered. I didn't mean to forget. She knelt beside him, trembling, her body failing. You didn't forget. You chose not to remember. Elias, dragging himself with 2 severed limbs, activated the final lock on the relay. The pulse began its final surge, and across the stars on every world the Empire ruled, every fortress it built, every voice it silenced, the story of Earth played, unfiltered, undeniable. Children watching fire bloom in the sky, soldiers hugging strangers before the end, a mother humming a lullaby as bombs fell, and Alara standing alone in the ash, saying, if we die, remember this, we were not broken, only buried. In the throne world of the Empire, the Empress screamed as her network turned red. Ships powered down mid-flight. Fleets refused orders. Entire battalions laid down their arms, sobbing, because now they knew what had been done, what had been taken, and what humanity had dared to give back. In the crater, Alara slumped beside Draven, their bodies barely holding shape. You win, he whispered, tears mingling with the dust. She looked up at the dead sky, a tear sliding from her blood-crusted face. No, she whispered, we remember. That's all. He nodded. Then maybe it's enough. And with that, he died. Moments later, Alara followed, smiling, because the stars had heard her, because the truth was louder than silence. Above Earth, the relay continued to burn, a beacon, a warning, a promise. She died beneath a dead sky, but when her story reached the stars, they wept. The Dominion relay burned like a second sun in orbit, even as the Empire's fleets scattered like crows from a storm they no longer understood. For the first time in centuries, Earth broadcast again, not a distress signal, but a memory, a truth, a final defiance, and the galaxy listened. From the coral spires of Threxos to the mighty moons of Sol and K, entire sectors fell silent as the pulse continued its path. Machines once thought mute began to whisper. Insectoid tribes sang in harmony for the first time in 5 generations. Sentient forests bloomed in colors unseen since the fall of Old Terra, because somewhere, deep in the code of every world the Empire had touched, humanity had left its fingerprint, and now it pulsed. A rhythm, a memory, a rebellion. In the vault-born expanse, the matriarch stood before her people, their ancient faces lit by the echo of the Earth pulse still vibrating through time. She succeeded, the matriarch said, voice shaking. The humans remembered, and so did we. All around her, vault-born scribes opened their ancestral archives, not just for storage, but to share. Worlds forgotten, voices long erased, cultures reduced to footnotes in imperial archives, all rising again, because one broken, bleeding woman lit the fire, and because stories are harder to kill than people. 2 cycles later, imperial strongholds on the edge of rim space began to fall, not to war, but to surrender. AI warforms laid down arms and began to hum Earth lullabies from the pulse. Children born under imperial law asked why humans weren't in their history books. Civil servants in gleaming towers quietly defected, smuggling out forbidden fragments of old Terran music, art, literature. The Empress issued silence mandates, but the truth had already bloomed. And you cannot kill what makes itself part of the soul. In the smoldering crater where the Dominion relay stood, a recovery unit from the Sable Accord Reborn arrived. They found wreckage, bodies, charred stone, and something else. A blackened hand, clutching a shard. Alara Ken's neural imprint was still active, cracked, fragmented, dying, but awake. They did not revive her in the traditional sense. Her body was ash, her brain ruptured beyond repair. But they did what humans always do when something refuses to die properly. They built her a voice. Years passed. The galaxy changed. The Empire fractured. Its core split between reformists and fundamentalists. Old species long silence stood. Again, the different echoes, once thought burned away, reemerged in strange children born of blended code and sorrow. But it was the voice of Earth that never faded, broadcast from the still-burning relay across sectors into memory and data waves. Alara Ken's voice, stitched together from logs, messages, neural scans, battlefield screams, and broken love letters. They didn't make her into a weapon. They made her into a storyteller. And when the voice spoke, this is what she said. I wasn't chosen. I wasn't special. I was just angry. They took our world, our names, our history. They burned the songs my mother used to sing. They buried Earth under silence. But we are the species that remembers. We are the ones who carry grief like fire. And when they told us to forget, we built a memory so loud it cracked the sky. You are not alone. You never were. Earth remembers. Humanity lives. And we are coming back. Centuries later, when the empire no longer called itself an empire, when war became politics, and politics became apology, a child stood beneath a new sky. He had never seen Earth. He lived on a terraformed moon, far from Sol, but he wore a simple patch on his jacket, a handprint, smudged with ash. Who is that? He asked his father, pointing to a statue in the city center, a woman in scorched armor, standing atop a shattered imperial crest, holding nothing in her hands but a data shard. His father smiled. Alara Khan. She reminded us who we were. And who are we? The father looked up at the stars. We're the ones who remember, and the ones who don't stop. The relay still burns, like a lighthouse in the dark, not because it's powered, but because somewhere, someone is still listening. Final line. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human.